All right, so recently Dr. Damion Crawford has decided that he is taking the government to court.
As Dr. Damion Crawford or minister?
Not Doctor, sorry. No, not Dr. Damion Crawford, Minister Damion. Not a minister. Is the opposition spokesperson on education,
right,
for the People's National Party. A lot of us perhaps think that, you know, why he believes that he's going to be successful in taking the government to court. A lot of people believe that perhaps it's a waste of time. A lot of people think that it is timely, it is needed. But what's your view on the position that he has taken? Given that I know you're very, very big on education. I mean, J.D. Tan has been doing tremendous work over the past, many decades now, you put it, or many years?
Yes, more than 12 years, yes.
You have been doing some tremendous work as it relates to education, both in the diaspora and also in particularly here in Jamaica. Is this an important step being taken by Damion Crawford, given the vacuum that exists at the primary and pre-primary level in our education system?
Andrew, what Damion Crawford has done is just a different position he's taking for something that is the law. Our constituency, actually, Jamaica's constituency actually states that the government has responsibility for primary and pre-primary students. So pre-primary is 3 to 5 to 6 years old, 3 to under 6 years old. And so I've been talking about this for 10 years. And I always wondered. I wrote an article probably about a month ago before Damion came out. And I asked the question, why isn't the government taking full responsibility of our pre-primary? Why? But I didn't even fully understood that our constitution protects our kids at that age. So I had to go and look to see at what age should the government be responsible. And it says pre-primary and primary, which means from age 3 up to age 5, going to 6 years old, and beyond into high school, the government has full responsibility for education. All right, so let me put this into perspective. Currently, what's going on? There are, at the pre-primary level, which is we call early childhood education, there are 2 different types of schools: the infant school and the basic school. And I'm going to school you guys right now, right? The basic school are schools owned by people in the community. The infant school is fully funded by the government. So there's a difference between a basic school, me got a basic school. I got Miss Chambers basic school. My mother had to pay to go to basic school. And this is from the 60s, right? Early 60s. And so 80% of the private basic schools in Jamaica are what's holding up our system at that level, from age 3 to 5, even from age 1 to 3. 80% of the schools in the early childhood education schools in Jamaica are basic schools which are owned by a person in the community. And only 20% are owned by the government or funded fully by the government. No. The government has made steps towards putting trained teachers in some basic schools, not all. But that's not enough, because 80% of our children from 1 to 6 are still being funded by a person in the community. And what that means is that the government is leaving our children's education at that level to people in the community. They have no responsibility. They may have a responsibility through the Early Childhood Commission, right? In the sense that they put up standards, and these schools have to be within, has to register. And if they don't register, whatever it is that they get or don't get. But that's as far as the government goes in terms of funding. They fund the Early Childhood Commission to hold standards in place for basic school, but there's no benefit for holding the standards. So many of the basic schools are saying, why am I holding standards if there's no benefit to holding standards? And so it is important for us to know that 80% of our students age 1 to 6 are being educated by non-professional teachers. I shouldn't say that. That sounds bad. That's not what I intend to say. Let me correct that. 80% of our students are being taught at the early childhood level by teachers who have not gone to teachers college to be trained as teachers, right? And what that means is that there are classes that some people do at the heart that makes them qualified to teach at this level, and a lot of the schools have these persons. But if you go across the world, people who have PhDs and masters are teaching at the early childhood level, because at that level is where all the behavior starts to show. That's where behavior management is required to guide students into primary schools and into high school. So let me give you some more facts. At the early childhood education, I lost my train of thought there. But anyway, if you think about early childhood, a child at age 4, let me finish this. I think I got my train of thought. We are implementing military-style policing at age 18 when our children reach age 18. And we send them to prison, and we send them to this, and send them punishment, serious punishment. But at age 4, when we have the option to guide them through behavior, at the early childhood level, both boys and girls are in school, 50% enrollment. Primary school, 50% enrollment, boys and girls. When they go to high school, boys start to dwindle. Why? Probably because boys have more interest in other things that when they get to a certain age, or maybe they weren't tended to in a good way, in a more behaviorally structured way at age 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. So we need to take a look at how is it that we're losing our boys at grade 7 to 11, and see if that has anything to do with grade 4, the early childhood level. And so I have no problems at all with Damion Crawford going to court to fight for the children at the early childhood level, because they need 100% funding from the government. And Leave that right there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, because this problem, in my view, isn't a new problem. It's not a new phenomenon that, you know, we that just happened. We have been, I mean, to say paper, you know, in some huge creators within our education system at that level. When I was at the Jamaica Observer, and I was Mr. Siaga wrote an article, a column in the Glean, I believe it was, and he spoke about why we should have the most qualified, most competent, most effective educators at the infant and the primary level. These educators should be at the highest end of the pay scale. Of course, senior teacher, vice principal at the high school would have an issue with that, but it is how we look at the education system and how it is structured, right? And Mr. Siaga was saying that you have to fix 20 years later, 30 years later, we see where the Scandinavian countries, Finland and Norway and Sweden, where the most competent, most qualified, most effective educators, the highest paid educators, are at that level in their country. And that is why they top rankings, the global rankings, almost every year. You know, you find those Scandinavian at the top, because they recognize that in order for you to have a healthy fruit, you have to deal with it from the seed to germination, and then when the tree is big enough to can sustain itself, then I mean, there's nothing, and maybe do a little spraying, but you will have a very, very resilient and healthy plant, right? And we see that happening at in Scandinavia. The question is, why is it that we haven't moved to address that issue?
Well, that's what
why
Member of Parliament Crawford is doing, because he sees that there's a gap that we need to fund. The government need to take 100% responsibility at that age, and which means if they take 100% responsibility. No, listen, there's going to be a lot of challenges there now, because since we have 80% of our schools that are private schools, how do we transition from those private schools into public schools? Well, maybe we don't need to. Maybe we need to fund the school and put more restrictions on them as to who they hire as teachers and how they teach at that level. I think that is a fair way of dealing. So we put more inspectors down there, more investigators down there, so that the schools are kept abreast and apace with the regulations according to the education, the constitution, the bylaws, whatever it is that we use to determine how schools are run. And so if a school wants to remain in play, then the government is going to say, okay, we're putting aside $100,000 every year for your school, and that includes paying for $50,000 for a teacher. You can't miss the teacher's pay because, or else, you know, you're going against the rules. It must include some computer learning and all of this, and that $100,000 not just going to go there. It's going to be there for the school and the students to access. And so it's going to be hard to, as I said, transition into government. But it's important that we have at least one or two educators who are trained teachers, who are trained at the college level, so that the other teachers who are on staff can draw from their experiences, can draw from their knowledge, and we build systems so that these schools are brought up to standard, so that standard is balanced across the whole country. 80% of our students at age 1 through 6 in private schools that are not funded by the government. That's a lot of children. That's a lot of children that we're not taking responsibility for. And so what happens is when they go to high school, we see a lot of behavior problems, see a lot of fights in school. Those didn't just happen. Fights don't just happen. Those are unanswered questions that are coming out. Those are questions about behavior that's been traveling with those kids from age 3 and 4 all the way up to high school, where they now feel that they have the ability that they can defend themselves and fight and be a bad man if they want to. Understand? But fights don't just happen. They're coming from deep unanswered questions that should have been asked from age 3, behavior issues that were identified, and we're going back to data again. They identify these and then we put it aside. We see that the person had an anger problem. We see that the person had the child had a behavior problem, but we even if we write it down, we just throw it aside. We don't let it follow the child to have another teacher look and say, you know what, maybe I can do something about this. So one fight in school, it's a trail of things that happen from the time they were in kindergarten or early childhood schools. It follows. So the outburst is a reflection of what has occurred over the years that's now unmasked. That's all it is. All right. And so we need to find out, how are we going to go to the early childhood schools and create frameworks that are going to be able to help behavior change. Go ahead. You're muted.
So I'm saying the data is there now, because I have noticed in the past 20 or so years now, a lot of the existing primary schools and infant department, and when you speak to the principals, they will that we are getting a lot of students from these early childhood institutions from around the community who are just not ready.
Because the standards are different.
Primary, I think, right, Old Harbour Primary, they now have an infant department. Davis Primary now have an infant department. Many of the primary schools are now going to the route of adding an infant department to try and bridge that gap, because it is very, very serious. Old Harbour High School, one of you high schools in Jamaica that still operate on a shift system. I think 2 years ago, the principal speak about the instituting of a literacy program for first farmers, grade 7 students, because of the volume of students coming into the school that isn't up to standard.
And that's because each basic
and you and I
school,
know, if the child can read, write, and comprehend, no matter the subject, the child will just not able to adapt.
That's because each basic school has different standards, different teaching skills, different types of requirements to get education up to standard. So they're not, so Miss Chambers, Mr. Tom, Uncle Harry, Miss Pam, all of those basic schools, they're not following a government guideline as to how to train these kids. They are doing their own training based on their own knowledge and their own ideas of how a child should be trained. So therefore, when they go to school, there are different standards all over. I mean, there's some schools that believe, based on early childhood education standards, that they shouldn't be teaching ABCs and teaching how to read, right? They should just be teaching them how to manipulatives and understanding feelings and sharing and so forth. Has nothing to do with ABCs. While other schools are teaching them not just ABCs, but big words and spelling and all of that good stuff. So by the time those children get to primary school, they are ready academically. The others are only ready based on their motor skills and so forth. So we can't, and that comes up down to assessment, right? Because if some schools are preparing students for motor skills, right? Understanding their hands and their feet and their eyes and their nose and what they know there, and what rough feels like from soft, and what color look like, what green and those things look like. If that's what they're learning there, when they get to primary school, they're not going to be ready for ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. They're not. So we have to know what it is that this basic school is teaching, so that they are ready when they come. The teachers are there to take them from where they are, because they're not ready academically. They're only ready by motor skills and by understanding their feelings and so we have to determine what standards all those 80% of students coming out of basic school, what is it? What standards are they? The standards should be similar to every basic school right across the country, so that we know when we assess them what we are assessing them at when they come to primary school. When you go to grade 1, how are we assessing them? Are we assessing them on academics, or are we assessing them on motor skills? That we have to know that, because if we don't know that, based on the primary school's operation, the only thing we know is academics. So therefore, if you come there, you're dunce. But the child might not be dunce. The child might be way ahead with motor skills, and not dunce, but just dunce. I hate to use the word dunce, but not capable of reading and writing, which is totally two different things. So we have to be careful about how we bring our children in from basic school, from early childhood schools, and we do an assessment based on how they performed at the basic school. Those records are going to come over to the primary school, and the primary school says, okay, this is where this child is, and then they can put them in the class that they belong to get them up to scratch. They may not be. We are looking at students and saying that, well, they can't read and they can't write, but they might be good at something else. If you think about it, but we don't do assessment for that. The only assessment that we do is whether they can read or write. But they may have been very skilled with their hands, and we don't recognize that. We just let them dunce. So it's important that we have a standard way how to move our children from basic or elementary school into primary school, so we can do assessments and get them up. I hope that you're still there, because I see you're stuck. You're muted. You're muted. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're hearing me now? Good.
Yes.
Right. So I'm saying that many I can hear the ministry officials and say, but the assessment is done at grade 1. You have tests by the ministry as well, and they are assessed all the way up to PEP. Right? You think they're confusing the ability to pass tests versus the ability to able to can function.
You have to repeat the question because you broke up.
In a proper society, they can decipher the information and interpret the interpret. Is it a case where those the ability to be able to can reason, to read an information and interpret the information properly and have an understanding of what this information is saying?
Okay, I didn't get the first part of the question. What are you asking me about that? Is it a matter that they what?
No, is it a case where you think the officials in the ministry are conflating the ability to pass a test, diagnostic test? Because you have the grade 3 diagnostic test, which comes under PEP, and you have the grade 3 literacy and numeracy, grade 4 diagnostics. That's how they call it, right? And then they have PEP 5 and then PEP 6. However, we still see where children, even at grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8, are still not able to comprehend simple information sometimes, to interpret it. You give me a note, I read it, I should be able to can understand exactly what this note is saying and articulate that in my own words to somebody else. Mm-hmm. Which is what they said PEP was created to do, to improve the reasoning ability of the children.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, I just wrote an article a couple of days ago regarding the various examinations that, over a period of time from the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and so forth. And we look at the JLE, the Jamaica local exam, look at common entrance exam, we look at GSAT, and we look at PEP. And we're looking at the difference on each of those tests. And to date, the PEP seem to be the one that will allow a child to leave school rounded, somewhat optimally rounded in terms of their reasoning skills. Because prior, the GSAT and the common entrance were a one-time exam, and they prepared them for the exam, and then they passed or they didn't pass, and determine whether or not they fail or not fail. But I like the premise of the PEP that is looking at the child's overall grade. But to be honest with you, I think that as we need to look at our assessments a little bit different. We're still seeing children at grade 7 and 8 who can't read, and that shouldn't happen. Reading means comprehending, right? It's not just to when I say read, I mean read and comprehend. And based on what I've seen in the news, in the reports, we have students in grade 7 and 8 who can't read, and that should not happen. We should have been assessing our kids and doing things to get them up to speed. And I don't know if it's a matter that teachers don't have the time anymore, or they're just pushing them through, or I really don't know. But I am a board member of a school, and I really enjoy being on that premises because I see how the teachers take care of each child. And I don't know if it's because the parents pay for these kids, and the teacher know that, and they know that they have to perform when they come out of one class and going into the next class. By the time those children reach grade 6, they are highly proficient in the way they reason. And I'm so appreciative of the school because it gives me the thought that there is potential for all of our schools to do well. All of our children supposed to be able to read and comprehend by the time they get to grade 7. And so I don't know, because I've not done any research. I've not looked at why is it that children are not. I have not looked at that, and something probably that I'll get to one of these days. I can give you a more solid, grounded response to that question. But right now, I like what I see with the PEP exam and how it prepares you at different levels of schooling, and that your final grade, your final test grade is not the grade that will grade you, but rather an overall 4, 5, and 6. I like that a lot, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to reason, to ask questions, to solve problems, and so forth. I really, really like that. But I mean, to get back to, to be honest with you, getting back to why Damion Crawford talked about early childhood commissions, early childhood education, I really like the fact that if it requires him to take the government to court, because it could have been any government, it could have been the GLP or the PNP government, to take the government to get the responsibility of the Ministry of Education, to take responsibility, full responsibility for all of our children, because that might be the reason why we're still getting students who can't read when they go to grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3. Can't hear you. I'm not hearing you. You are completely muted. So you've been talking and you're completely muted. You're okay. There you are now. Okay.
Yeah. No, so I'm saying, sorry about that. So I'm saying many persons like Damion or like yourself will know, point to the root cause at the early childhood level, where it is for decades now, where the number is extremely high. I don't remember the percentage, but it's extremely high. How many students leave high school with one CXC subject? Right? That number is very high. Unacceptable. Right?
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Keep going.
And persons like a Damion will say, but that is why we're to about up to grade 3. I think all a child needs to focus on is the ability to read, write, and reason. So math, English, and some other, what we call it, mental ability, the ability to reason. I think that should just be it. I am seeing where you have to buy. My daughter is 9-year-old. My son is 16, going 17 now. So this is fresh in my mind, right? I remember I have to be buying science book and social studies book for, right? A lot of the things them that you're exposing the child to at that level, that the child can learn that at grade 4, 5, and 6. So I don't necessarily. The focus should be so much on the ability to read and write and reason properly. get that. That should be the focus, because the other things will follow. You and I know, Leo, that if the child can read well and reason well, then that child at 13, you can give that child the CXE curriculum, and that child will pass the CXE exam.
I don't know if I agree with you in terms of, because the rest of the world, children are learning.
That?
No, I'm just saying that I'm not so sure if I agree with you. I'm saying that the rest of the world, grade 2 and grade 3 children are learning about their environment. They're learning about everything that they live. Globalization is a big thing. I mean, you have to learn about other countries, and the best time to start learning is at grade 2 and grade 3. So reading doesn't have to be, so if a child learns to read early, then it opens up the door for them to learn other topics in science and geography and so forth. It's okay because they can read. It doesn't matter what you read. I think that once you learn how to read at grade 1 and grade 2, then you, in grade 3, you can start doing sciences. And in fact, you already start doing sciences and the arts. I believe that all high schools should be doing, all of our high schools should be doing problem-solving research. We should minimize our research and bring it down to their level so that they get to learn more about their surroundings, more about, and they can ask questions about their surroundings and learn more and answer the questions. They should get involved. Every high school in Jamaica should be involved in research. Every high school. And it's something that I believe in strongly. We're talking about STEM and STEAM. If a child is doing research, understanding why cell phones disrupt class, or why mangoes have maggots in them, or why mangoes cause excess sugars in body, learn the things around you. I think that we just need to challenge our children them a little bit more. All we're doing is preparing them for exams, right? And that's the whole focus. And that's okay. But I think that we need to challenge them more to get more from, we're only losing what? 4%, 5% of our brains. We can increase that. We can make it better. And so right now we have AI coming in, and AI is supposed to help us to think a little bit more than what we have been thinking. But people have been lazy because some people are pushing back on AI and some people are going forward. So the people who are going forward with AI are the ones that are standing out, right? The ones that are pushing back against AI are the ones that are standing behind. So we have to become a little bit more curious about our environment from early, so that we have more to think about, that when we get to grade 6, it's a breeze. Somebody said to me one time, I think it was my sister-in-law back in the days, she said, Leo, by the time I got to grade 6, I knew exactly what the topography of France was like. I knew where the buildings were. I knew more about France than even when I traveled to France. And so that took me back, because it means that she's been reading about everything, and she has a wonderful brain up to today, right? And so we can't hold them back just because we think that they should do that. I think we should focus on reading and understanding, but give them all the opportunities in the world to problem solve, to understand their environment, to learn about the globalization and the world, and give them the opportunity to be a whole human being. I call them optimally rounded individuals.
I want you to compare a country that is very similar to Jamaica in terms of the social environment, the economy, level of literacy, and compare the performance of those children to our children academically?
Barbados.
Which country? Barbados?
Everything is similar in terms of our...
And what is it that Barbados would have done right? Or what is it that Barbados is doing that we are not doing?
I have not looked at it, but what I looked at was that they are doing...
No, I didn't get that. I didn't get that.
Okay. Barbados have like a 98% literacy. They are very advanced. They spend a lot of time in making sure that all of their children can read. They can read. And so I don't know what it is that they do. I just look at the statistics, the data. What we focus on at the high school level, is whether or not a child... I was reading an article last night. Well, I was writing an article last night. And when you ask a person, a mother or a father, at the end of PEP or GSAT or Common Entrance, the question that they ask is not whether or not the child passed the exam, is which school they're going. You understand that? Which means that we have a hierarchy of schools. Immaculate, JC, KC, Queens, all of these schools.
KC,
that
Champion,
right? Yeah. And when they take the exams, Monroe, when PEP is done, all of these top schools get the cream of the crop. All of them. These top schools get the students who get from 90 to 100 go to these schools. Right? Then what happened to the other children who get 40% and 50% in their exams? They go to another school. More than likely, it's going to be a non-traditional high school or a high school or an all-age school or a secondary school out in the country. Right? But yet we still rank the schools. Think about it. We're still ranking our schools according to how well they did with having math and English as the first, inside the first 5 subjects that they took and passed. And so what will happen over time is that, and what has been happening, the first 15 schools will remain the first 15 schools forever, because they are going to get more resources, they're going to get the best students, they're going to get the best teachers, the best of everything, more funding, more everything, because of the schools. And those schools will always remain. And I don't think that will ever change. Jamaica will never change with that, because the society expects it. We're coming out of colonialism, and that's what it is. Every other country in the world, well, I shouldn't say that. In the United States, in Canada, there is no such hierarchy. It's in college, but at the high school level, you go to a high school, the standards are the same right through. So we don't bunch our children and take the cream of the crop and send to these high schools. That's almost illegal in other countries. It's legal in Jamaica. And so we only know at the end of PEP which school the child goes. We're not whether or not they pass their exams, right? And so those schools are always going to be the cream of the crop. And when they do investigation on these schools, school improvement programs, the total, how do you compare a Campion to Orokabesa High? You can't, because Orokabesa probably get the students who are getting 30% in their PEP. I hope you understand where I'm going with that. Our entire system is unfair. Our entire system needs to retool and come again. we're all shifted on one side of the coin. If you didn't go to that school, you should feel like you're dumb, or you're not eligible for that type of life, because only those kids who go to that school can get into leadership. I mean, the JLE, they call it the local exam. It's the same thing that's going on. You know, the top schools get those, and people vie to become the other people vie to become nurses and teachers and so forth. And so there's a big swing to one side in our country in terms of high school, and it's hard to have a conversation with me about equality because it doesn't exist in Jamaica. You there?
Yes, yeah, man, I'm here.
You understand what I just said? Eh?
Leo Gilling, as the Minister of Education in Jamaica, and you have 5 years, one term. No, I'm putting this question to you. I'm putting this scenario to you. So Leo Gilling is the Minister of Education, and you have 5 years. What are some of the immediate things you think you will definitely implement to really fix this problem we are discussing?
The number one thing is that for us to move out of crime, we have to invest in our early childhood education system. That is the basis for a lot of our problems in Jamaica. And I would want the Ministry of Education, the government, to take full responsibility of early childhood. What does that mean? That means we implement a program to incorporate basic school under the government's umbrella, so that we have one common system, one common approach to education right across the island in early childhood. It's a big project. It's a huge project. We have one common curriculum, one common system of recruiting teachers, one common way of teaching our children with lesson plans. All of this should be similar right across the island. We should not have any more basic school outside of the system. And so that would be my number one priority, because I believe that crime starts at early childhood education. Crime starts at early childhood education. And I believe that if we start taking care and managing our behaviors, managing our teachers, I'll tell you this. I truly believe that we have a lot of teachers are dysregulated and students who are dysregulated. If we have dysregulated teachers and dysregulated students inside the same classroom, what we have is explosion, right? So let's say a teacher, this is number two. So let's say a teacher comes from Trenchtown, one of the bad areas in Jamaica, and they're very bright and they get a chance to go to teachers college, right? Well, when they get a chance to go to teachers college, that's an improvement from the life that they are accustomed to living, right? They go to teachers college and they teach them curriculum development. They teach them how to teach the curriculum and the teaching practices and all of that. And you learn how to deliver that curriculum. One thing they didn't learn is how to deal with their own triggers. Maybe they grew up in an area where mom and dad fight are hard to get food to eat, and them have to fight for dumpling and stuff, and a lot of anger problems and stuff. Those are not addressed at the college level. So when a teacher comes back into the classroom, they're going to teach a child who's from the same neck of the woods, right? And they teach that child from that same neck of the woods. The child comes to the classroom and the child has anger problems and the child doesn't want to talk. They withdraw and we call them dunce and we call them lazy and we call them all of these things. And then one day the child says, "I'm not doing it anymore." And the teacher say, "You're disrespectful," and go, go into the corner and stuff. But the teacher did not learn how to identify the triggers, to interpret the behavior, to understand how it is that these children from some of these neighborhoods or some of these families are behaving in this way. What are their challenges before they come to school? Maybe mommy and daddy is not getting together, they're not working, and just so a lot of challenges. And we don't take the time, the teachers don't take the time to understand those challenges. And so what we do is go into the classroom and we cause more problems because we have triggers, because we had the same experience. We had triggers, the children has triggers, and all of a sudden emotion flies. And then we're back to adaptability. And how do we reconstruct? How do we restore ourselves? How do we restore our children? How do we restore the classroom after a blow up, after a crisis happened? And so we need to learn all of those things. So that those are the two things that I would address as Minister of Education if I have for 5 years. One, early childhood education, and two, how a teacher learn how to interpret behaviors, de-escalate crises, understand how to restore using restorative practices, and all that. So spend some more time on our teachers and spend more time at early childhood commission. That's early childhood education. That's what I would do. Did that answer your question, sir? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Muted. You're still muted. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm saying one other thing is that I'm going to try and get somebody from the ministry side to speak to shed some light on it, because it's a big topic. We see it over and over. We see the kids with these huge knapsack on there, but yet still we're not seeing this sort of numbers to match that sort of investment. Psychology and sociology, you have to fix the environment. And I think if you fix the environment, then the operators within the environment the environment needs to change. We have to fix the environment. And I just think that's the biggest point for me. Teachers come about the homes the students are coming from. That is a factor as well. You hear teachers complain about there is no special ed department in all primary schools, for example, right? And even in some of the major primary schools, it doesn't exist. When teachers suspect that this child needs to be assessed, they might be autistic at some level. Me pitney na mad. A mad they say I call along for me pitney, and they take great offense to suggest
the teacher should not
the child
the teacher should not
needs
do that
to be assessed.
Yeah, the teacher should not be assessing whether a child is autistic or anything. the teacher should do.
No. So the teacher will know, be given the behavior of the child. The teacher will know, say to the parents that I think you need to get your child assessed, given that we are seeing a consistent in a particular behavioral pattern. Right?
Yes. Right. I agree.
But you remember now, the teacher isn't trained. The teacher isn't trained,
at the early childhood level, right?
Given that this child is an outlier in terms of behavior. Right.
Behavior.
And within grade 1, 2, and 3, because I have heard principals, I have heard teachers, this when they look at the child, given the constant complaint by this teacher, and they will call in the parent and say, I think you need to get the child assessed,
That's the right.
What is happening at the home? Right? And of course,
so there's a problem.
Whatnot.
There's a problem.
And they will now say, well, go and get the child assessed. But here's the problem, though. To get the child assessed, here's the problem, though, Leo. To get the child assessed, in many instances now, the onus is on the parent, and the cost isn't cheap. I can't remember the cost, but the cost isn't cheap. And I think the government has some system in which, I think at MICO, but then you're placed on a waiting list.
For 2 years and 3 years.
It could take you 2 years before your child get assessed.
Right. It's important that we have resources to fix our education system right now.
Yeah, it's a serious problem. It's a serious problem. So, I hope to have Damion on. But we want to. I believe that we have the resources now. I believe we have the resources, because the bottom line is that if your roof is leaking or you have no roof and you're a working person, you will have to just shift some of the resources from wherever to fix the roof. I just think that our government just needs to just shift the resources from somewhere and fix that problem. That's what I think needs to happen.
Well, I hope that they have the resources. I really do. Because if they do,
is that wrong? Or I am not in agreement with the government.
Yes. All right, man. It's so nice to be able to sit down and chat with you.